Hello, my friends, and welcome back to my channel. If we're meeting for the first time, my name is Taylor, and if you're an old friend, not old as in age, but an old as in dear heart, welcome back. Today, we're diving into a topic that is really, really important for me to share around the history of herbalism and why it's very painful, why we're still feeling the effects around the history of herbalism, how there have been multiple attempts to erase herbalists, and we still very much see the remnants of that yet today. And I really want to dive into this topic. I have notes for today because I want to get this right. It's an important message that I think just will really help me to articulate some of the thoughts that I have in kind of being a voice for the oppressed. It's kind of how I feel a call to be as I step further into my work, especially around herbalism and natural medicine, because we've seen a lot of oppression around these voices for centuries. And so grab your cup of tea, go pop in your earphones, go on a walk, get some nature in, whatever it is. But I want to dive in. And even before we do that, I think it might be good for us to just give a little bit of grounding and transition into being present because this is coming with a lot of energy, to be honest, from myself, and just feeling the collective ancestral energy that comes with this across the globe. So, if it is okay for you to close your eyes, that's great, but I'm going to close my eyes. If not, you can just breathe with me deeply. I like to put my left hand over my heart and then my right hand over my lower belly. Feel your feet on the ground or wherever they may be, and just breathe in here and let it out. Let's do two more like that. Really deep breath, deep into your belly. Slow, long exhale out. Let's do one more here, deep into our belly. And slow, long exhale out. And as I was just connecting into my breath, to my body, the plant yarrow popped in. And yarrow is a very fierce warrior protector. And so that energy is here to kind of hold this space for us as we settle in. And, this may not hit you in any which way. It may hit you in a lot of ways, depending on where you are on the spectrum of being a mystical, amazing, intuitive plant being. But just let this land and know that Yarrow is here to also just be with us and we kind of talk through this difficult topic, to be honest. But the title that I have for this video is around From Witch Hunts to White Coats, the fight to discredit herbalism. And it truly has been that. And we're going to dive into a high level overview about some of the things that herbalists have dealt with over many, many centuries. Hmm. It's a heavy topic for me as an herbalist, for sure. But we often say, herbalism is alternative medicine, using plants as medicine and alternative, but that's couldn't be farther from the truth. In fact, herbalism has been around forever. Like plants and human beings have evolved forever, and animals using plants as medicine forever. Um, Plants are the medicine of the earth. They were put here on the earth. And I won't go into all of it, but there are quite literally constituents and actions and pieces within plants that humans are reliant on that we do not create ourselves. So this evolution of humans and plants and animals too has been forever, really. And so herbalism is actually the oldest and the most original form of medicine of the earth and on the earth. And herbalism traditionally has been passed down from oral tradition. It started as that, right? Working with the different plants and passing that down to everyone else excuse me, passing it down to, I know I'm going to just like kind of clean my glasses as we talk about this, passing it down through generations. And there have been multiple huge moments in history where there have been massive attempts to completely erase and quiet and silence the practice of herbalism and natural medicine. And we are still seeing the effects of this still yet today. And there's a lot of probably um, biases that we don't realize are stepping into even yet today and discrediting herbalism yet today because of these reasons. So we're going to go over some of these things. So let me get back in here. So yeah, long before there was hospitals, before there were pharmaceutical medicines, before there were doctors, insurance companies, there were the plants. They were the original medicine. And every single culture across the globe, at some way, shape, and form, has been a plant-based society. So this is in your blood. This is in our beingness to be connected to plants. And you saw this throughout history through herbalists. You had midwives, there were shamans, grannies, medicine keepers, and they were the ones who really were the tenders to health and healing and knew what was growing in the communities around them and worked to be the healers of the community. It was very much community-centered healing. It was very much intuitive. It was sacred. These people, these healers were highly, highly honored, respected, and seen as amazing in their communities. And then let's jump forward to starting about 1400s. It really kind of peaked in the 1500s. Um, the burning times is what they call it. And this is kind of the witch hunt era of what you see. I'm just reading a book right now that is talking about healing the witch wound, and it talks a lot about what actually happened. But this was really across the globe that happened. And um, essentially, in a nutshell, it's a really packed history, so it feels kind of discrediting to like summarize it this way, but I do really invite you, if you're curious about looking into natural health, is to really study the history and learn more about what has actually happened beyond kind of the books that you will find on the doctor shelves, because they're not going to find them there. But essentially, similarly to what we saw, the Burning Times was kind of more rooted in the backing of religion. And there was essentially this giant movement to accuse people of witchcraft, accuse witches, anyone who was in midwifery, herbalists, healing, psychics, anyone who was in there, they were brought in to be the scapegoats for anything bad that was happening. There was a big rise in painting these people as extremely evil. Anytime there was famine that was happening, there was a climatic event that happened, maybe a flood, maybe a drought, maybe a woman miscarried, maybe a child died, whatever it is, they started to become the scapegoats and were very much pointed out in the public as evil and people who are harming. And was very much, a lot of these people also were not even truly practicing healers or spiritual beings. They were simply accused of. And I won't go into all of the background here, but the torture, the public humiliation, the horrific murders, the accusations that came forward happened for hundreds of years, of centuries of time, and created this extreme, I don't even know what to call it. I'm having trouble with some of these words because it's like hard to put all of this into words, but created this extreme prejudice against anyone who was a healer. They put literally the fear of God in people to practice, to be associated with, to hear of, to support any type of um, natural healing of spiritual beings, anything like that, indigenous healings. You see this a lot also in a lot of the colonization that came over in different indigenous communities. You see them really erasing the history of these people and their spiritual practices and their connection to the earth. And the the torture, the absolute public humiliation, the experience of having people being in a tight-knit community and then their best friend accusing them of being a witch because they were fearful for their own lives, um, the beheadings, the executions, the burning alive, the burying alive. I mean, you guys, these are really heavy, heavy things that had happened to tens of thousands of people who were healers, all to be used as a scapegoat and to say that push towards religion, push towards indoctrinating, to push towards fear, because when people are in fear, you'll see this a lot, then they're easier to control. And if you were to ask me, were these people evil? I would say 100% no. No, absolutely not. In fact, these are probably some of the most powerful and healing people out there who were trying to be erased by a greater power that wanted to come in and control the population. So you saw this all during the medieval times. Um, it was not about superstition, it was about control, like I've said. And it really was the number one fracture to this breaking this. I didn't realize I was going to get emotional, but it is really, it's challenging. Of this breaking of this lineage, and you see it throughout a lot of indigenous cultures and just earth-based practices. And it put a huge fracture into natural healing intentionally. This is very intentional. They often say, why did we fear witches and not the people who burned them alive? Right. And so there is this thing that we know about now called epigenetics. And epigenetics essentially is the science, is the study, is the understanding that stressors, trauma passes through generations. I think I remembered it's 7 generations, but these massively traumatic events, massively controlling propaganda, um, pushing through all of these things that happen have huge effects that shift society as a whole for almost ever. I mean, it's not forever, we're shifting out of it, but we are still feeling this very much so. Think about the way that you associate the word witch. What comes up when you think of the word witch? I know for me, even as I don't really necessarily know if I associate my name or myself with the word witch, like I do have books that are like Green Witch and stuff like that. I just haven't really, for good or for bad, I just haven't really felt a deep connection with that necessarily, that label. But I will tell you, when I felt really called to buy the book, Healing the Witch Wound, I made sure when I was in the airport that I was hiding that. right? So that's what made me dive into it a little bit deeper. We have a very big prejudice against the word witch. It's an old cackling woman who's usually crazy. They would call specifically herbalists, they would call them quacks. They would call them phonies. They didn't know what they were talking about. They really, 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 this is the beginning of not only trying to physically wipe them out and wipe them out from history, but they were also trying to simultaneously discredit this information. Anyone who had intuition was practicing, black magic and all of these things. So, very, very, very heavy. We're seeing this today as not being able to step further into these practices that are so beautiful, that are so healing, that had healed people and helped people for centuries, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about that too. But that was the burning times that we saw throughout the world. Oh, there was also a book. I can't remember the freaking name of it. I read it like 5 times and then I haven't read the book, but I read the name of it. But this, you'll see this also in the next piece that I talk about. There was this essentially document. I can't remember what man came up with it. Sorry, I'm not a man hater at all, but it's just always, white man. We have to be honest about what's happening here. But there was the religious doctrine that came out that just like was the keystone piece that was pages and pages and pages of detailing how horrific women are, how much they need to be silenced, how they are conspiring against. They were seeing, how powerful women are in the healing arts, and they clearly wanted to shift that. And this was also, I can't remember if this or at the time. There's just other times where you will see that women specifically are targeted. It was about 90% of the people who lost their lives in the witch hunts were women, but there were also men as well. So that's important to note as well. So then fast forward to another really key point in history that is more recent. In 1910, this was when modern medicine, I guess if you would call it allopathic medicine, began. The industrialization of medicine began. And this came through in the Flexner Report. And this was essentially two extremely rich men decided that they wanted to take over healthcare, backed by, you might know these names because we've all heard of them, Rockefeller and Carnegie. And they came out with this report, backed this report, I should say, the Flexner Report, to essentially put a giant separation and try to discredit all natural medicine and really, again, control the healthcare system that we see today, which was very much rooted in surgery, drugs, as in pharmaceuticals, and laboratory science, right? So just think about those: surgery, drugs, laboratory science. All three of those are completely disconnected from the earth, right? So simply put, anyone who was competition to them, they weren't having it. And you have to realize that the very real history in science and medicine, I believe in both, right? That is what my belief is. We need both. We need intuition and we need science. But we are very, very, very we are fed very much a very clear propaganda belief around healthcare and have been since the early 1900s, specifically rooted around money and making money. That's just how it is. So I won't go into all the details around what happened in 1910, but essentially that's when insurance was created. And then this whole movement started to come around creating doctors. And doctors, again, were trained in drugs, surgery, and lab science. And so there was this point where at the time I think it was actually illegal for doctors to consult with herbalists and natural medicine. So there's a very strong division. Um, I'm just trying to read what this says. Medicine moved from being community health based to very much centralized. Herbal schools, indigenous healing centers, Black medical colleges were shut down or defunded. So you can see it's not as outwardly violent as the Burning Times, but this was very much so about the focus on money. And that's where we start to see it today is we want to control this health thing from a monetary standpoint. And you see it today. I mean, health is like the number one money maker, especially in the US. Look at the pharmaceutical companies, the disease, like I don't even know. I should know off for this video and off the hand what the money maker is, but that is very much so where it is. It's always been about control. And now, so it's more about control of money. This is when you started to see almost every single pharmaceutical drug, by the way, is derived from a plant. But the reason why we don't see plant medicine is because you cannot patent catnip. You cannot patent yarrow. But what you can patent is if you take a little piece of yarrow out and then you put some other pieces in there in a lab, you can patent that formula and you can charge $100 a pill. Yarrow, you could grow for free. Pills, you could charge $100. And remember, when we're talking about health, there is a lot of fear that is ingrained in health, right? It's very easy to say you're sick, you're going to die, your kid's sick, you're going to die. There's a lot of fear-based in the health industry. Therefore, it's very easy to control. I will now speak about this a little more freely because there's been some years in between a few, but this is exactly what we saw with the COVID epidemic. I am telling you, you can call me a conspiracy theorist all you want, but the second I heard about the COVID epidemic, I knew it was intentional. Intuitively, I knew. I've been following the corruption of Big Pharma for so long. I knew intentionally it was, I knew initially it was intentional, and it was a push for vaccines. And that was ultimately a push for billions and billions of dollars to the pharmaceutical companies. I'm not saying it wasn't real. I'm just saying I've been following this corruption for a long time. They use this propaganda marketing. You guys, I'm telling you, billions of dollars are put into this industry, this allopathic medicine industry, to keep us in this system of unwellness that perpetuates itself. And when you look at herbalists and people in natural medicine who are looking at the root causes of what's happening, who are looking at healing with the earth, who are looking at ways that aren't huge money makers, or looking at true healing and true health, that doesn't match with their agenda, right? So you can see still we are trying to control the landscape. Healing is no longer about healing in relationship with the earth. It is about authority. And that is where we are today. It's very much around control, authority. You see this a lot around propaganda that is trust the science, people will say, well, you're not a doctor. There's a lot of discreditation that's happening of around if you're not this on the books, then you are not credible. That is 1,000% detrimental to any type of intuitive healer. And I'll tell you firsthand, obviously I'm very biased, but I do believe in some doctors as well. I don't believe that doctors are the people who, I'll just say that. I don't believe that doctors are the ones who are doing the harm intentionally. I really don't. I know that it's the systems that are doing harm. For example, you'll hear many times in from doctors in their schooling, in their practice, they learn almost everything about pharmaceutical drugs and they'd have no classes, not one class on nutrition. So that just goes to show they're not learning the right things in order to promote natural healing, right? And natural health. We are starting to see a little tiny bit of shift there. But the herbalist suppression is still happening. I guarantee this video will be censored. There are a lot of things around shadow bans. So shadow bans are where you're saying keywords and that's being suppressed from an AI perspective. We saw a lot of this during COVID on Facebook. If you said anything natural or you spoke up against COVID and what was happening, it was shadow banned. It was marked as not fact checking. So this is the modern day calling us quackeries, right? Trying to discredit, saying that the white man in the coat only is the only one who knows. The dogmatic thinking around science. Listen to the doctors, don't listen to anybody else. The very much censored version is what we're seeing today. Even now in the United States, today, you guys, it is illegal to be licensed as an herbalist in the United States. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's in the world, but definitely in the United States. We are not legally allowed to say we diagnose, we treat, we can claim that we cure anything. So just think about this. We're not allowed to get licensed as herbalists. We're not allowed to. We can't say that we diagnose, we treat, or we cure anything. We can't use things like words like medicine. We're not allowed to use words like anxiety, inflammation, immune support, without risking ourselves being censored or completely shut down. A lot of people during the unnatural doctors during the COVID epidemic were shut down. They're massive things called quacks, called what was the big term that everybody was saying? Misinformation. You're selling misinformation was the big thing. That's a lot of things. I have a lot of background as well around cult following and mind control. Things like those trigger words are things that help indoctrinate you to shut down your thinking. So if somebody says, "Oh, they're spreading misinformation," people will hear that and then just stop listening to what they're saying. So these are very intentional things that have happened against herbalism and still are currently happening because herbalists are technically a threat. If that's how you want to see it, even though that's not how herbalists see it, but they are a threat to allopathic medicine because truly, if you're asking me, the allopathic medicine industry, the healthcare system that we see it in the Western world is not about wellness. It is about sickness. It is about profiting off of our illness. You just have to look at the money behind it. Truly, the money behind psychological drugs. Oh my God, it's insane. Chronic illness, all of these different things that we see, massive, massive buku bucks and profits. And so, unfortunately, If we start to figure out how to heal ourselves and work with herbalists and work with the earth, that is taking money out of their pockets. It just is what it is. Let's talk about this a little bit more. So, still today, websites are getting flagged, like I was just saying. Social media posts are being removed, although I think that's shifting a little bit because of all of this. But I've definitely noticed when I talk about certain things like this, I definitely see a drop in views. My posts aren't getting out there for a time. Um, so all of this, we're kind of still, not kind of, we are still being silenced. People will call us like, oh yeah, is this really real? Is your intuition really real? How could you know that? They question all of the things. I have people all the time question what's in my products, what's the validity of them, what's the safety of them, but then meanwhile flipped over to pharmaceuticals that, remember, have billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars of marketing backed behind it. And if you think you haven't been propagandized, you have been. We all have been. Mind control is a slow drip of the same messages all the times. Over the COVID era, I literally saw with my own eyes. I probably have it saved somewhere because I was so shocked. The exact marketing slogans and propaganda they were going to push billions of dollars behind. It was the things around get vaccinated to save your community, trust the science, all the things that we heard. And now a lot of us are spewing ourselves because that's how it works. It's not to shame us, it's just to start to open up our eyes up and be like, whoa, what is happening around health? What is happening? So, meanwhile, why herbs and herbalists are being like discredited, don't listen to them, stop looking at them. What we really want you to look at is how good is Zoloft. It is so good for you. It will save all of your problems. But if Zoloft isn't working, then you got to get this other drug as a kicker because your depression might be worse. The push of pharmaceuticals, you guys, is now being celebrated in the mental health community. I feel very challenged as an herbalist in mental health, walking that fine line of not shaming people because it is so celebrated to be on pills to take that. Don't get me wrong, we have a lot of challenges in the mental health world, but obviously, as a mental health herbalist, emotional health herbalist, someone who believes that we can work through these things naturally, I don't really subscribe to we all need to be on a pill to get through the day. There's something further going on there, if you ask me. We see pharmaceutical um, advertisements everywhere. Everywhere. We see celebrities advertising for this. We see influencers advertising for this. We have this way in our world now of saying that science and doctors are upheld as the only credible sources of health knowledge. Think about that, really. Right now, in this day and age, for the most part, if you are not a scientist, if you are not a doctor, you probably don't hold as much credibility when it comes to health and certainly not enough knowledge. And I'm telling you right now, nothing freaking boils my blood more than that. Period. There are massive amounts of amazing healers out there who have true gifts, who have true knowledge. And I don't care if you've studied for with Harvard or whatever the best freaking medical school is out there. We are in an era where trust the science, trust the doctors is very much pushed. And I will also say, usually when there is so much push towards something, there is so much funding from somebody behind the scenes who wants that science pushed. I won't even get into how that's not true science. That's actually dogma that they're pushing down your throat. Actually, maybe I will for a second. If it is true science, you can question it from every angle, and please do. That's questioning. But what we're hearing is science nowadays, it's dogmatic thinking. things even around this autism stuff that's coming around with RFK. I know I'm touching on some really tender subjects here, but I really want us to get curious about this because this is how we break out of the like, oh, we're trying to silence certain people. So this autism thing with RFK, I haven't followed it too closely, but a little bit enough to touch the surface is the thinking of don't question it. We know where it's coming from. That is not science. That is not science. Science is the continual evolution and understanding, and science is constantly changing and evolving over time. Remember back in the day when they said that smoking cigarettes was fine when you're pregnant? Yeah, that's evolved. So has other things. So the second you start hearing people telling you to not question things, just believe what is true. What is completely true cannot be proved otherwise. There's very little actual truth out there, especially when it comes to health. So always stay curious, but this is another thing that we look at. So herbalists, we often start to see herbalists then as underqualified, untrained. I even see it when I network with people. Where are you trained? Who did you study with? What do you know? Like very much like what's your background? What's your science? Which there is a truth to that, right? There is an importance to that of actually being knowledgeable and knowing. But when we only value the learning from the book and this certain source, it's very, very dangerous and actually very detrimental to our health and massively detrimental to our intuition and our natural intuitive gifts as women healers. They often say they're unscientific. I've even seen very incredible, I won't call them out here, very credible herbalist sources and communities calling things like this out. It's shocking. It's shocking. There was a recent post with one that I study from and follow, which I'm learning, who was also saying I will just say, even in the herbalist community, there are two very prominent front runner organizations that I know of who are very, very much about backing by the science, which is so important. But holy shit, you also have to have that intuition, that indigenous knowledge, that wisdom, that knowing from beyond knowing. You have to have both and we are still massively, massively out of balance on the dogmatic thinking, the scientific thinking, the controlled thinking, the censored thinking. Let me tell you, the credibility for herbalists is beyond what a lot of doctors that I have seen. I will just say for myself specifically, I am working directly with the plants. I am intimately learning with different teachers, different practices. I know within all of my integrity that I am educated in this and I don't necessarily have an 8-year background degree. So we have to start switching up our thinking when it comes to the healers that you're working with. Do your own research, but also trust your intuition when you're working with that person. I hear time and time and time again about people coming from doctors who have these massive degrees who have completely misdiagnosed them, overlooked them, not understood the whole picture. This is not an us versus them. Truly, I know it's making it sound like it, but I'm trying to give you a picture on how herbalists have been pushed, 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 pushed to be discredited when it's not even close to being warranted. So, all of this is rooted in capitalism, colonialism, patriotism, money, control. Real healing, you guys, is community. It comes from the earth. It comes from aligning ourselves, understanding our lifestyle choices, our situations, the things that we're doing and choosing beyond that. And it's not going to make millions and billions and gazillions of dollars, if you ask me. So this is a story of trying to erase indigenous wisdom, intuitive wisdom, starting from control. The colonizers, right? Trying to control the narrative, control the religion, control the health, control all of the areas of our lives. But even with all of this trying to be erased hugely twice in our history that we know of, it's still surviving. Because you know what? The intuition, the connection to our ancestors, the connection to the earth will always prevail and bring us back. And so we're seeing this resurrection of coming back and this trusting and understanding that there can be both. There needs to be both. I obviously had a very pointed conversation around, why I have such disdain for the way that medicine is being treated, but there are really good pieces of it too. We need the science, we need the intuition. That's why I like to weave in both in the work that I do. I absolutely bring in the science and I absolutely bring in the intuition, the head and the heart. We need both. We need both. So we're returning. But as you're kind of moving through your life, just think about how you start to see these biases kind of show up. Hold yourself gently if this is bringing up a lot within you. Maybe it's the first time you've contemplated or thought about it. These are charged conversations because they've intentionally been created that way for centuries. But we will no longer be silenced about this. Healing with plants is an incredible thing. It's magical. It really is. And there is a way to have both. So I will leave you with that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for just your thoughts below. And yeah, if you want to follow along and learn more about plants from the science and the intuitions part, follow along. And if you liked this, hit a like. If you want to stay connected, hit subscribe and comment below what popped through for you during this conversation. Sending you so much planty love. Talk to you soon.